Good morning. Pure Michigan Business Connect is excited to host the first ever Michigan Furniture Industry Symposium in partnership with Lakeshore Advantage in the Right Place, strengthening Michigan's position as a leader in commercial furniture manufacturing industry. No industry has been immune to COVID-19 related challenges, and the commercial manufacturing furniture industry is certainly no exception. Supply chains everywhere have seen unprecedented disruption. Manufacturing operations have stalled or required pivoting. Employees, once accustomed to going to the office and sitting in the very furniture some of you here today have built or contributed to production on, have been working from home. With all of these circumstances have presented unique challenges to this industry in particular. They've also provided us an opportunity to come together today to learn what the industry can look forward to as a commercial furniture OEMs like Herman Miller and industry tier one suppliers like Nuvar strengthen existing relationships with Michigan suppliers and create new partnerships with some of you entering the market for perhaps the first time. Our webinar program today will include a welcome to the industry presentation, followed by presentation on Industry 4.0, considerations for manufacturing, and will end with a great panel discussion on industry challenges, trends, and opportunities. Following the webinar, we have scheduled one-to-one buyer-supplier meetings with a number of industry purchasers all the way from California to Toronto, who we're so glad are joining us today. We had nearly 200 suppliers apply for meeting opportunities. So if you applied and were not selected for one, please don't be discouraged. This webinar will provide you with helpful information on how to navigate future opportunities in the industry. MEDC's Pure Michigan Business Connect, also known as PMBC, is a free service that brings Michigan businesses together with local, national, and global companies for supply chain sourcing opportunities. This demand-driven, multi-billion-dollar public-private initiative developed by MEDC in 2011 is structured to make connections with all industries. PMBC aims to uncover procurement or innovative gaps by working with local and regional partners, like today, to identify suppliers that fill those needs. The PMBC team facilitates introductions to these suppliers through data-driven matchmaking events like this one today, buyer tours, pitch competitions, and other supplier immersion initiatives. Since its inception, PMBC facilitated more than 58,000 Michigan jobs. We've hosted over 220 matchmaking initiatives, and we've provided business connections across 80 industries, facilitating approximately 15,000 buyer-supplier meetings. So that wraps up the beginning. Now I'd like to bring to our virtual stage Deirdre Jimenez, President and CEO, Business and Institutional Furniture Manufacturing Association. Deirdre?
Thank you for the introduction, Tanya, and the opportunity to open today's symposium with an overview of the commercial furniture industry. Let's start by acknowledging the furniture industry is far more than just manufacturing. The $16 billion North American commercial furniture industry contributes to ongoing research, steering the evolution of the spaces we work, learn, heal, and play. Through evidence-based design, furniture manufacturers have developed artistically iconic and innovative products that provide needed functionality and activate the human experience. Furniture provides one of the most personal experiences someone has within their environment. While we mentally engage with our computers, we physically engage with the furniture that supports us. Furniture manufacturers understand this and focus on the wellness of the individual designing their products from both an ergonomic and environmental perspective. Suppliers play a key role in this as well. Materials and mechanics used to make products adjustable, comfortable, and artistic contribute greatly to the innovations and environmental impact of the industry. BIFMA, as an ANSI-approved standards developer, has authored numerous standards addressing safety, performance, sustainability, and emissions. Two new standards under development are one, a cleaning, sanitizing, and disinfecting standard, and the second addresses ergonomics. These standards exist to protect customers. BIFMA also provides free registries to the market to make it easier for customers and designers to find appropriate products. The BIFMA compliant registry hosts products that have been tested to ISO 17025 by accredited labs. The level registry lists products that have achieved one of 3 levels of certification against environmental and social impact criteria. Both registries and standards are available on the BIFMA website if you are not yet familiar with them. There's been a lot of coverage of COVID and the impact that the pandemic has had on the industry after workers were sent home for what has now become just over a year. Projects stalled, real estate sat empty, and new orders slowed. In 2019, the U.S. commercial and institutional furniture market was $14.74 billion and going strong. With the onset of the pandemic in 2020, the market was estimated at only $12.8 billion, representing a 13% decline. The first half of 2020 was supported by orders placed in 2019. The impact for our industry hit late in 2020 and into 2021 when the gap of new orders from the previous fall was realized. Companies who are already expanding their sales channels were able to pivot quickly. E-commerce and residential sales saw growth and continue to help mitigate near-term sluggish office furniture revenue. Slowly, we are seeing activity again in the workplace as projects restart and we see commercial furniture pipelines replenish. But how quickly and to what extent will depend on the future of the workplace. There are many conversations and surveys forecasting what the future of the workplace will be post-pandemic. Most of the industry is expecting some kind of hybrid form of working from the office and from the home. Prior to the pandemic, companies were already exploring remote work, allowing employees to have their primary workplace at home using the office as needed for collaboration and access to resources. This approach worked well for those who had a space for an appropriate work area in their home and had the ability to manage work-life balance. The honeymoon period of working from home ended within a few months as companies realized workers did not have the proper equipment to work a full day without creating physical strain. Workers also realized the distractions of home life. We've all heard the dog barking, the garbage truck, the kids coming home from school, doorbells ringing, and the occasional walkthrough as somebody did not realize you had your camera on. It's just not realistic or equitable to expect the average household has spare rooms available to set up full-time home offices. According to a recent Bloomberg report, office searches that had been postponed are reactivating, searching for less expensive rates and more concessions from landlords who are eager to bring people back to their buildings. National demand for office space jumped 28% in March from the prior month and is now just 9% below pre-pandemic levels, according to the property data from BTS, who tracks office tours. They also shared that the demand was up in Seattle, San Francisco, and New York by over 200% on average. In addition, according to security company Castle Systems, their data shows approximately 26% of office workers in major cities were back in the office, improving from a low of 15% occupancy earlier this year. So the trend is positive. The February Architectural Billing Index data showed that a notable uptick in design contracts and billings for the first time in over a year, moving into positive territory. Many of our larger manufacturers are reporting upticks in commercial contract activity and orders, which should result in better numbers by the end of 2021 and into 2022. IHS forecasts the furniture industry will slowly continue to rebound in 2022 and well into 2023. These signals would indicate that companies are returning to the office. Assuming the hybrid approach ensues, the amount of office space individual companies may need may change. And with that change often comes remodels, and with remodels often comes new furniture. The commercial furniture industry is comprised of seating, tables, storage, desks, and other ancillary furniture. Products historically have been defined by where they were used, but in recent years, as interior design trends have crossed over from one market to another, furnishings have followed. For instance, offices that were previously defined by a grid of square workstations are now divided into neighborhoods of furniture groupings that range from cafe setups to lounge areas, with the overall aesthetic taking a nod from hospitality. Likewise, schools are now emulating both office and hospitality spaces. Hospitals are incorporating less utilitarian furnishings and opting for products that nod to residential, seeking to provide patients and family a setting to ease stress and anxiety. Products are also changing, from heavy fixed assemblies to movable, adjustable individual units. This is where the innovation has occurred. Sit-stand desks and now sit-stand conference tables, ergonomic chairs with multiple adjustment settings, and adjustable privacy screens. No longer are chairs the only piece of furniture on wheels. Small file cubes, individual workstations called work carts, conference and training tables, all movable and modular to address the growing customer expectation, allowing them to customize and control their immediate environment while satisfying company expectations to maximize the use of the furniture asset. Then there are new products coming onto the market. Pods, for instance, a cocoon of sorts that provides for individual privacy in an open setting. These pods continue to evolve with new technology and features: acoustics, reclining seating, electrical and data connections, task lighting. These products were conceived to respond to employee concerns about noise and disruption that was a byproduct of the open office, but they are now developing into applications that work for hospitals and airports where unexpected overnight stays can occur. The pandemic also accelerated issues around supply chain. With borders temporarily closing, labor shortages, and pauses in new orders, the supply chain was disrupted, and like a large freighter, it takes time to turn. The proximity and number of suppliers became important. Sales channels were also challenged. As customers needed to support large populations of remote workers, manufacturers were asked to help those workers acquire proper furniture for their home office. This required a quick pivot in their processes for order taking and delivery. Manufacturers who were already exploring e-commerce and residential sales channels quickly adapted. But now all manufacturers are recognizing that these sales channels are viable. It was the revenue from e-commerce and residential sales that helped offset the revenue gap caused by the slowdown in commercial orders. Still, there are other manufacturers who are establishing retail consumer stores. The existing supply chain and sales channels needed alternatives, and the manufacturers pivoted quickly. Those challenges turned into opportunities that created proof of concept. Few items have had a greater significance on total well-being than the human and ecosystem health. Architects, designers, and customers are increasingly interested in chemical transparency. Legislative and regulatory requirements stemming in part from Prop 65 influence the industry. BIFMA members largely support avoiding the use of chemicals of concern in their products. The industry is seeking to identify and implement clean chemistry wherever possible. The ANSI BIFMA E3 Furniture Sustainability Standard was first published in 2008 and remains a leading standard for the assessment of environmental, health, wellness, and social impacts pertinent to furniture products. This standard is the only furniture standard of its kind with a publicly disclosed chemical of concerns list. The standard lists over 500 chemicals that manufacturers should be aware of and rewards the reporting of an eventual reduction or elimination of those chemicals from their list of finished products and manufacturing process. The resurgence of concerns surrounding climate change, ecology, and other environmental impacts are additional issues that the industry takes seriously. The standard recognizes a variety of sustainability attributes for materials such as climate neutrality, recycled content, efficiency of material usage, biodegradability, selection of rapidly renewable materials, and life cycle assessments are ongoing topics of discussion. Level has created an industry certification that delivers the most open and transparent means of evaluating and communicating both environmental and social impacts of furniture products in the built environment. To put it simply, Level is to furniture as LEED is to buildings. Prior to the pandemic, trends that the industry was focused on was a demand for larger capacity furniture to address growing obesity in America, flexible adjustable furniture to support occupants that desired to control their immediate environment, eco-friendly products to address renewed concern for the environment, multi-purpose products that adapt to various settings and tasks, movable and modular products that allow for user reconfiguration, and augmented reality supporting virtual shopping and consultation. Coming out of the pandemic, those trends continue, but now we're seeing additional trends in hybrid in-store and online business models emerging. Digitization of the manufacturing projects to shorten delivery time, increased demand for material transparency, and concern with product end-of-life strategy. It's an exciting time to get involved in the furniture industry. All aspects of the industry are being re-engineered, reinvented, or reimagined. We are seeing leadership reshape the parameters and push the boundaries that were historically associated with commercial furnishings, moving to become more agile to advance evolving strategies, crossing over to new markets for growth and inspiration. To become relevant in the industry, you will need to be an innovative partner bringing ideas and solutions, recognizing that the furniture industry drives the shape of space through products that feed the imagination and reflect who we are as a society. I want to welcome you to the industry. I wish you the best in your upcoming conversations, and I hope to see you as a BIFMA member in the near future. Thank you.
Wow, thank you, Deirdre. Great information about the state of the commercial furniture industry. I imagine there has also been an increase in physical therapy and massage therapist visits. So thank you for that information. All right, so next we will be discussing Industry 4.0 and considerations for the commercial furniture industry. Let's welcome Justine Burdett, VP Technical Services at The Right Place and Regional Director at the Michigan Manufacturing Technology Center West. Good morning, Justine.
Good morning. Thank you so much, Tanya. It's really a pleasure to be with you all this morning. And Deirdre, thank you so much for that introduction and deep dive on the furniture industry today. My presentation is going to zoom out a bit, but first, let me say again, thank you so much for the MEDC and the PMBC program for having me here this morning. I wanted to spend a moment and set some context about why I'm here and why I do what I do. I grew up in an entrepreneurial family, and today my parents still own and operate an apparel manufacturing business. In our family, we call that their first baby. I just happened to be their first daughter. As a kid, I lived the struggles that many of you go through on your shop floor. And later, when I entered business as an adult, I experienced the massive effort it takes to create and grow a sustainable business. So when I learned that there was this profession called economic development, I was hooked. How cool is it that a whole group of folks is working on the strategy and process of improving the economic well-being and quality of life in a community? At its heart, economic development is about building prosperous regional economies that drive long-term growth for its citizens. This work impacts everyone, creates jobs, builds independence, and retains our talent. And bonus for me, The Right Place is host to a regional office of the Michigan Manufacturing Technology Center, which is part of a federal network of such centers across the entire US that provide consulting and training to small and medium-sized manufacturers. The center, as we call it, is hosted by The Right Place, but serves all 13 counties of West Michigan and is a trusted advisor for manufacturing leaders such as yourselves. We support operational excellence transformations, develop leaders and cultures, and support Industry 4.0 journeys. But enough about our organization. The good folks at the MEDC asked me here today to speak with you about Industry 4.0. And before you roll your eyes at that term again, let me assure you that we're only going to mention it at the end from here forward. First, I know the panelists after me want to talk about the plant floor and the business challenges you're dealing with right now in the commercial furniture industry. So let's play a little game. Let me know in the chat if any of the following headaches resonate with you. And Deirdre called some of these out. Lack of qualified talent. You can't find people with the skills you need today and are staring down a silver tsunami of retirements and tribal knowledge walking out your door, if not at this very moment, but very soon. No coordinated plan for upskilling the workforce you have, and certainly no time to train them now that production is back. This, of course, bleeds into your quality measures. Errors from lack of training abound, and it seems like every time you turn around, new requirements are sucking up your precious resources. Downtime continues to increase just when you need all of your equipment operating at peak performance. Your maintenance staff is overwhelmed with demands, and this leaves no time to do what you know you should, preventative maintenance. And not to mention the global supply chain had a meltdown, and all the while it seems like other companies are beating you to the punch with new products to market. Sound familiar? Now, what if I told you that there is a solve for some, if not all, of these issues? That's right, the rapidly expanding and deepening connections between technologies can alleviate some of these woes. Now, I know this next slide is a bit of an eye chart, but the first thing I want to call your attention to are the bulleted lists of technologies in the gray rectangles on the outer edges of the slides. Independently, some of these technologies have been around for years. Things like 3D printing, generating replacement parts yourselves, sensors, ERP software, it's been out there for ages. Now, focus on the pie, the orange wedges in the middle. This is where the computing power and cloud are creating leapfrogs of value and creation by connecting what were once separate and distinct nodes of technology into interoperating families of systems that work together to solve these common challenges faster and with less human intervention than before. The automation and lean technology categories bring together all those nodes that assist team members in the performance of their jobs through the elimination of waste, such as transportation, repeated movements, defects due to incomplete or ineffective training, and costly delays due to the absence of information. Collectively, the data gathered here drives the process and product production improvement and process control. Digital design and manufacturing down there in the far right corner. This family of technologies leverages the disruptive technologies that have completely changed the product lifecycle and the processes used to design, test, manufacture, and service products over their entire life cycle. And the business intelligence family drives manufacturing operations and management end to end. It leverages those lean manufacturing technologies to make system implementations easier, more impactful, and create more easily recognizable value. So let's put this slide in a slightly different context. The families that we saw on the slide before are really 6 design principles at work: interoperability, visualization, decentralization, real-time capability, service orientation, and modularity. These are all things that are enabling the quote-unquote smart manufacturing. The first of which is interoperability. To do any of this, you must first bridge together the aspects such as people, standards, work processes, man and machine. And to accomplish this, data and networks are essential. Virtualization. Cyber-physical systems must be able to simulate and create a virtual copy of the real world, as well as monitor objects existing in the surrounding environment. Then digital twins can be augmented by real-time process data and analytics based on accurate configurations of the physical product, production systems, and equipment. Decentralization is accomplished by bringing autonomy and autonomous decision-making to machines and those cyber-physical systems. This is enabled by the Industrial Internet of Things, which connects frontline industrial processes with back-end information systems. Real-time capability. A smart manufacturer needs to be factory needs to be able to collect, store, and analyze real-time data and make decisions accordingly. This contributes greatly to the flexibility and the optimization of production. Your service orientation. Production must be customer-centric. You know this probably better than most industries we have here in West Michigan. Embedding smart sensing, analysis, and communication capability to the product enables this service orientation and new business model revenues. And finally, modularity. In a dynamic market, a smart factory's ability to adapt to new market trends and changes is critical. Things like computer-aided design tools, artificial intelligence, and software interfaces to allow customers to connect more directly with you and the manufacturing of their product. These 6 principles are at the core of information technology and operating technology, and the convergence as well as emergence of cyber-physical systems, denoted here by the red square in the middle. This is really the linchpin between your business goals and challenges and the technology solutions. So while the technologies and use cases are a means to an end, they are not the end in and of themselves. The fundamental purpose of driving advanced manufacturing techniques and technologies is to achieve your business goals, such as those things like cost reduction, the quality improvement, the increased throughput. So I know that we flew through this really quickly, and I am very excited for the panel that is going to come after me and really dig into this and share their perspectives of what's happening in their lives as they see it in real time. I want to say, ladies and gents, that if your organization has implemented any of these technologies and found value in connecting them to one another, then your organization is practicing Industry 4.0. You can do it, you should do it. Pick one of your most challenging pain points and just start. Thank you all. I'd love to connect. I'll make this presentation available to the MEDC. And if you're looking for a customized roadmap of how to implement some of those technologies, we do have a free assessment available. Thank you all so much.
Thank you so much, Justine. Industry 4.0 is such an interesting concept to me. I love hearing about it and how it applies to all the different industries. So thank you so much for that. All right, so now we are going to move into our panel discussion. We recognize that we are running a bit before schedule, so hopefully everybody that wants to hear this is here with us. Our panel will be discussing trends, challenges, and opportunities within the commercial furniture manufacturing industry. So I'll go ahead and introduce the panel and our moderator. First panelist is going to be Rebecca Bainick, CEO of Neutral Posture. Les Brand, CEO, Supply Chain Solutions. Todd Folkert, President and owner of the Bold Companies. Amy Sparks, owner, President, and CEO of Nuvar Inc. Kyle Williams, President of Work Furniture Group, Leggett and Platt. And this panel will be moderated by Mike Dunlop, Principal of Mike A. Dunlop and Associates. Take it away.
Well, good morning, everyone. It's great to see everyone here. We have over 100 people registered for today, so that's a great for a first opportunity here. I'm going to start fairly quickly. I'm going to address the first question to Kyle Williams and followed by Rebecca Bainick. The industry is facing many supply chain specific challenges as a result of COVID-19. Other industries such as automotive, appliance, and technology-based companies are also facing many supply chain management challenges. What challenges are unique to the commercial furniture industry and why? So Kyle, take that one, please.
Hey, thanks, Mike. First of all, I think that as everybody probably knows, that it's been one of our biggest challenges and continues to be in all our businesses is managing and dealing with supply chain disruption and supply chain issues. And I think that overall we're fairly similar, I think, in many ways with a lot of other industries. But I say we're a little bit different is that, I think in the beginning stages, obviously a lot of us were focused on how to get PPE into our businesses, how to supply and provide it in the early part. And I think that focusing on keeping our employees safe has been a #1 priority for many of our businesses. I think probably related to us, and I'd say, Mike, in our businesses, it really came down to how do you manage changes in disruption that were regional in the beginning. It started with disruptions in China, and then we moved to facilities and operations in Italy, and staying on top of all the different areas, both the legal issues and the changes that go on in, for instance, supply from Mexico or from Canada or from Poland or from states like Michigan, being able to know, what are the legal requirements for businesses there and how it would affect your supply chain was really an issue. So we have to stay on top of it depending on where our suppliers were and being aware and adaptable. So I think adaptability in our business is really important. We have most of us and many of are involved with suppliers around the world. So being very adaptable in this business was a real issue and continue to be.
Kyle, thank you. Rebecca, please.
Well, to start with the PPE part, we never shut down. We've been open every day since this happened, except during the big Texas freeze. So we made masks for all of our employees, and we made masks for a bunch of other businesses in town that stayed open. So we did that starting in last March, just because we did want to keep everybody safe.
Yeah, I guess wherever we could put it, he wants it in the.
Someone has a microphone on.
Please ensure that your microphones are muted during the panel.
So we, separated everybody to, provide social distancing within the office. From a supply chain standpoint, I mean, we are getting now much longer lead times just all of a sudden, and pricing is going through the roof between the value of the dollar, the increased pricing in petroleum, and the fact that there are so many products that we use. I mean, every piece of plastic that is used in the furniture industry has petroleum products in it. Some of our fabrics actually have petroleum products in it. Our steel company is giving us new pricing and new lead times every Monday. So when you look at this, it's getting more and more difficult. Our foam company, one of the ones that we use, they can't get one of the chemicals. So we're meeting with them on Tuesday to see how we can reformulate the foam using chemicals that are available. So it's not just your purchasing people and your production people that are involved in this, but when you're trying to re-engineer a product based on the lack of global raw materials, it makes it very difficult to do that and do it fast enough so that we can replace those products and not run out of foam. I mean, we get 3 truckloads of foam a week, and they're telling us we can have 50% of our normal production. We can't do that. I mean, we have to still fulfill all the orders. So for us, the constant changing of the prices and the longer lead times and the fact that raw materials are just not available like they were before is really going to start changing what's happening in our lead times.
Thank you, Rebecca. Our second question, I'm going to start with Todd Folker and follow with Les Brand. What are the most important challenges you are dealing with within your own business and company? Todd?
I think the operative word there might be today, because literally it's a very just dynamic situation. I mean, each and every day there's a different challenge. To add to what Rebecca and Kyle were saying earlier, it's literally changing day in, day out. So you might come in on a Monday expecting one thing, and then it changes, and Tuesday you're dealing with something else. I mean, when you talk about the most important challenge, I think that's, basically anything that impacts our people. I mean, that's the most important asset of any business is our people. So, how are they, how is their health? How are we taking care of them? I mean, we've seen, significant spike in absenteeism. I'll say most of it I think is legitimate, but there's always that, some people that might be gaming the system, but it's people that are having to stay home with sick kids, or people having to stay home because their kids in quarantine, or maybe they're in quarantine, or maybe they're sick, or whereas before they might come in if they had a little sniffle, now they're staying home. And again, that's all to be expected, but absenteeism has definitely risen for us. We track it, and we've been monitoring it for the past 5 years. And this last month was the highest that we've seen in 5 years in terms of the percentage of people that are calling in absent. So that creates a daily challenge when you're setting up production, and it's, oh, okay, we're missing 1 people, we're missing 2 people in this cell. So that's been very challenging. I think the other part of it too is just dealing with the stress and the anxiety that people have. There's been a lot of pent up anxiety that people are living with throughout the course of this past year, and they bring that into work. And so how do we deal with that? How do we talk to them about it? We have a program with Pine Rest where we offer up to, I think, 4 free visits for every employee, and we're really promoting that. I think in the past, a lot of people had kind of a stigma associated with mental illness or mental health, or I'm just gonna grind through it. Well, try to talk about that. And again, I think this is an environment that, we have to recognize that there's added stress, there's added anxiety, and how do we deal with that? So I think anything that relates to, again, our people, that's going to be the most important issues. But again, daily, there's a different challenge. It could be a shortage of materials. It could be, you had a truck that was supposed to come in and it doesn't. It comes in 2 days or 3 days later. Supply chain shortage overseas, trying to get it imported, held up at the port. Again, escalating fuel prices, having those pleasant conversations with customers on, hey, I have to raise your price. And, they're thinking, okay, it's going to be single digits. And no, it's 20 to 30%. I mean, we're seeing things, to Rebecca's point. I mean, steel prices changing weekly. It's very, very dynamic, and there's really nothing that you can kind of take your finger off the pulse and move on, because it'll change. So in some regards that's exciting, in other regards it's exhausting, and it's just a matter of showing up day in, day out, and doing what we do best and trying to celebrate the wins and promote the culture and drive towards our vision and our purpose.
Todd, thank you. Les Brandt. Whoop, your microphone must be off.
How about Todd, how about the challenges in rising logistics costs in the supply chains, So steel goes up, foam goes up, logistics costs are going through the roof, especially if you're getting support with suppliers overseas. So both globally and locally, every day, and stress in the organization is part of some of our challenge. We're spending about, we took a tally a couple of weeks ago, how much time we're spending tracking and tracing shipments, global shipments or domestic shipments for our client base. And our organization still is fairly small. We've got about 150 associates working in a variety of different offices around the globe. But we're spending about 255 hours a week on just figuring out where shipments are for our customers. So this uncertainty of the future is causing a lot of the customer issues. Customers are in chaos. They need to know where their material's at. So that, and also the longer lead time, Rebecca, as I think you pointed out, is challenging. And then we're seeing customers also, because of our billing cycle, the receivable is growing and stretching out. So that's a challenge for our finance organization to sort that out. We're also spending a lot of money right now in technology upgrades. So we don't spend the 255 hours a week on tracking and tracing. We can instantaneously understand through real-time information where the shipments are. So we're quickly implementing that. So there's been a lot of pressure on the talent of the organization. They're working weekends, they're working long hours, so that stress is there throughout our organization. So we don't see this ending anytime soon. If we're looking for any type of relief, I don't think it's going to be it's going to be at least second quarter 2022 as we see it right now.
Les, thank you. Move to our third question. We'll start with Amy. During the past 15 months, supply chain interruptions have really occurred both locally and globally, and Les and Todd have already addressed some of that. But what are the most important lessons that you have learned, and how have you addressed them?
Sure. I think we learned once again that relationships matter, right? Being a partner when everything's going right pays off because your partners are pulling you through when times are tough. We talked about going back old school a little bit, with everybody working remotely. All of us can attest to, you used to get a lot of emails COVID, you're getting exponentially more now. Pick up the phone and talk to people. Be proactive right at the first sign of a concern, and really talk through and start to make some contingency plans as quickly as you can. You know, as Todd mentioned, every day's a new day and almost a new battle. So you really don't know what you're coming into. But the more prepared that we can be and the more options we have in place to really plan for the unexpected, better we can pull through. We went back to a lot of discussions and found, you know, inventory is key at this point in time. And those customers who were willing to have, you know, inventory agreements in place and had better forecasting models, obviously better communication with both internally and externally, fared much better throughout these past 15 months than those who didn't. So that's where I come back to right components, right people, high communication touches were really key to helping us day by day, right, get through the new challenges that we're all facing.
Thank you, Amy. Let me go back to Les. What are some of the most important lessons you have learned as well as with your team, and how have they addressed them?
Well, we're actually, I'll turn that question a little bit. We're learning every day, of course, but our customers are trying to figure out how to circumvent the pandemic, the situations that the pandemic has caused. So we're being asked a lot about how do we mitigate this? How do we get our material moving faster? How do we maybe alternate the trade lanes that we're using to bring material in, both locally and globally? So in the short term, we've incurred, and we deal with a lot of manufacturers. So automotive, very stressed out right now, as everybody here on this call. You've got to, on the short term, you've got to really take a look at bolstering your safety stock, trying to understand that increased communication that Amy talked about with your customers and your suppliers. That's got to, we're weekly on calls with our automotive and furniture customers talking about delays. What are we going to do to mitigate? There's 20 ships anchored out in front of Long Beach and LA that can't get into berth. And this has been going on for the last 6 months. So do we really want to take stuff through that port, or do we want to come around to Houston, go through? So lead times are extending. So how do we mitigate that? So the first thing we're suggesting on the short-term basis is, increase your safety stock, lengthen your lead times, try to look for transit time improvements. And then long-term, I think this is going to have an impact on future questions in the same area, is we're going to start to see, and we have started to see, especially in automotive, nearshoring and reshoring and duplicity on their product supply. So instead of a lot of it coming out of Southeast Asia, we're seeing a lot moving into Mexico right now. We've got a lot moving down into the Central Americas. So we're seeing a lot of that shift happening. And then this technology improvement, I think we're investing heavily there to ensure that we can understand exactly what's happening and shorten that time period so that we can help mitigate some of those issues.
Thank you, Les. Move to Kyle Woods. I'm going to preface this with Kyle. Leggett Platt being such a large global operation, you bring a unique view to this question. So we're very interested in hearing what you have to say.
Okay, thanks. Well, first of all, I agree with everything Les and Amy are talking about as well. Obviously, being really active with your customers and being proactive in this particular area is critically important. I think that I would say what I probably add to it as well is this is an area that we really found our leadership team has to be on top of this on a daily, if not weekly basis. It's not one that you can delegate and not be involved in and actively regularly. One example would be things around think about cash flow. Last year, every organization was really looking to try to manage their cash and as aggressively as possible. And that becomes difficult in managing inventories. And when things start to ramp up, you need to really be active with all your people in order to protect your customers and try to be proactive at the same time. So I think that leadership involvement, leadership activity is pretty critical. The one thing I'd also add is that, like many here, we have a combination of, local supply as well as distance or stretch supply chains. Really looking at our programs and being careful about stretch supply right now and trying to get alternative options as much as possible. It's not something we can do quickly, but also really valuable. I'd say lastly, just from a Leggett perspective, but we have a lot of different businesses, as you know, Michael, in different industries, and we really begin to lean on each other more than we ever have. Leveraging what the automotive group's doing or bedding, particularly around when we had problems with foam. We have a large foam company. We've been able to leverage those relationships to help us with alternative supply. We've got relationships in the chemical companies that have really helped. So really reaching out where we could and where we can to really get as much assistance as possible has really been helpful. And I'd say it's something probably all of us should continue doing as well going forward.
So very insightful from all three of you. I want to move on to the topic of price increases, which has already been touched on. But what product prices are you having issues with beyond what would cover the same, but how are you addressing it? It's still an issue. And I'll start with Rebecca.
So right now, they're coming at us so quickly. Product that we're getting from Italy came in 2 weeks ago with a 10% price increase and a 3% fuel surcharge. So 2 of our chair lines just had a 13% cost increase. You look at the freight cost going up exponentially, everything else, petroleum, and the way that it's affecting every piece and part of our chair, the steel prices going up for our systems line. What we're doing is we have actually gone to GSA to ask for permission to use a surcharge, because we don't, they'll only let you do a price increase once a year. We don't think a price increase is going to get us where we need to be, especially when you consider in January, we have to go to the $15 an hour minimum wage. And, that trickles up. So everybody who's making 15 wants to make more as well. So we're trying to negotiate a surcharge that would be a commodity and fuel surcharge that we could reestablish every quarter what that amount is going to be. And maybe as things level out, that number can come down. But just like with, what Todd said earlier, you have some product that is now 20% higher. And for one thing, GSA is not going to let you have a 20% price increase. So we have to make sure that what we're doing with them gets negotiated first before we introduce that out into the general public. But this global raw material shortage is just causing havoc everywhere. And we're hoping that with the surcharge, it would be something that could be put in place on a temporary basis, and maybe temporary means a year until things level out. But rather than having just an across the board price increase, we're just afraid that if we did a price increase 6 months from now, everything would have still gone up more, and we would not have increased the prices enough, and we wouldn't be able to have another price increase for another 6 months with GSA. So, that's kind of where we are on how we're trying to handle it, to see if this is something that they are doing. And response was, well, we have to take that all the way to the new guy that runs the IWAC, and I can't remember what his name is at this point. So we have to put all the documentation together to show them all the letters we've gotten that show all the price increases that we're getting that show that the value of the dollar is changing, you know, what we're getting from other countries. And hopefully we'll be able to get that done and approved with them, you know, in short order. I just don't see how you have a general price increase right now based on everything being so fluid and not really knowing what things are going to look like 6 months from now.
Thank you, Rebecca. Todd, how are you addressing these cost increases or product increases?
Yeah, well, there's a few different areas of our business, and you know, the question is what products are you having issues with? Yeah, I mean, the short answer is all of them. You know, or maybe the short answer would be what products aren't you having an issue with? And you know, there's very few, because it's across the board, as you know, Rebecca was talking about, as well as Kyle, and you know, so I think first and foremost, it's about communicating with our customers, letting them know, hey, we want to keep you abreast of what's happening. It's very fluid. Things are changing, you know, frequently. And it's challenging because we don't want to be raising prices every single month or every single week. But there is that moving target. You know, what do we raise the prices up to? You know, what do we, you know, how do we handle this? So, I mean, a few things. There's a large portion of our business is customization, and those are all project-based projects. And so we've shrank the amount of time that we used to quote, and our pricing was good for 90 days. Now we've brought that in and we're saying our pricing is only good for 30 days. And we had an instance where we had quoted something 4 months ago. The customer came back, wanted us to requote it, and the price went up like 20 or 30%. And they came back, they're like, what, like their initial response was, do you just not want this work anymore? And we're like, no, like, yeah, we do, we want it, but that's just the reality of the situation is we're not making any more money. It's just that the margin, you know, the price of the steel has gone up, and you know, the board, a lot of these things are going up. So how we're handling it on the custom side is, again, communication, shortening that quote window. And then on our OEM and private label relationships, it's communication. And then the other challenge though is to go through and raise prices. It's not just a quick, oh, okay, do the calculation and say, we've got to raise it 5%. I mean, with a lot of our customers, we've got to go in and provide all sorts of documentation, all sorts of proof. I mean, to raise prices, it's a huge project. And so it's another one of those things that, how do we manage our people's time? Because I could probably turn 3 people loose for the next weeks on repricing out all of our products. And then by the time that they're done and pass on the price increases, it's all for naught, because they're going to just have to go through that exercise again. So some of it we're handling with, okay, what are the prognosticators saying? How much, you know, should we go 5% right now? Well, maybe if we go 7, that will give us a little bit more of a cushion. But you know, so on the single digit ones, we're handling it that way. On the double digit increases, it's almost, you know, fortunately more of that is project based, but on the other programs that we run, you know, we're having those conversations, you know, with our customers and letting them know, hey, either this is what your price is going to be for the next month, and we're going to come back, you know, a month later when you're ready to place your next order, or we can raise it a little bit more right now, so maybe you can get by for the next 2 to 3 months. But it's very situational and very customer to customer, and again, very you know, fluid and changing, you know, not quite daily, but certainly weekly.
Certainly a different time here.
I've never experienced it in 20 plus years.
And Mike, I would like to add a little bit more to that, and that is why we're really looking at this surcharge, because we have so many contracts in place that say you can't raise the prices for a certain period of time. But when we did this, I think it was like in 08 or 09, when fuel got to be, you know, $4 and $5 a gallon, GSA did allow pretty much across the board fuel surcharge for everybody who had a GSA contract. It seems like an easier way to do it, and something that our commercial customers understood, and that at some point it went away. And it did, like in 2 years it went away. So we didn't raise their prices across the board. We just used this surcharge to kind of get us through this situation until the global raw material situation resolves itself. And also the, you know, employees being more readily available.
Make some very good points. I want to move on. I'm going to start with Amy. Kind of I would say a favorite topic of mine, but one that I'm quite familiar with, and that's the working from anywhere scenario. I mean, how have you addressed a working from home scenario, both internally and externally? How a shared collaborative workspace might work within your business, but really, how has it affected your communication with your customers?
Sure. I think for everyone, it's a highly personal issue. It's different for every person on where they're at. So it goes back to, again, communication. Obviously, like everyone else, we followed those protocols. We made sure our teams were, 6 feet apart, and we had the distancing and the blocking. We made sure everyone had their masks, and again, put the safety of all our team members first, and then really dove in and like Todd was talking about, did a lot of talking with our teams, with our customers, finding out how people were doing. There's a lot of anxiety around it, and that takes people's attention, and distraction rises to a greater level. So tried to have those authentic conversations with folks. We worked with our teams to determine which jobs could be done remotely, which really needed to be done in person, and what was best overall for our organization, because there's a lot of gray area in there, and how do we best support one another to make sure we can be there and support our customers. Thank goodness, right, for technology. None of us were Zoom experts a year ago, and look what we can do now. I think those of us who were smaller seem to sometimes have and maybe still have a communication advantage. Even though we don't have all of the latest and the best and the highest technology at our disposal, we can update one another seemingly more efficiently and effectively, and get a consistent message across to our teams and our customers. We saw with some of our larger customers just a really big challenge, as people were all remote and disconnected. We talked about when we used to get a lot of emails before COVID, how much that has increased, and just the complexity. I don't know what others have experienced, but I know for our customer service teams, they can get 7 emails about the same exact thing from 7 different people, and from the same organization, and you can obviously tell they haven't talked to one another at all. And maybe 15 minutes later, you're getting a whole nother 7 emails about 2 other lines on that same PO, and it's kind of a timeout, guys. we don't have enough people, enough time, right, to read all of this and go through these. How do we streamline that communication? That's really been, I think, a bigger challenge, and hopefully something as we talk about lessons learned that we've highlighted during the pandemic. Really, what are those processes that are in place? How many people have to get involved in a discussion? How many people are doing repetitive work at our organization, at our customers' organizations, and hopefully out of this, I try to look for, okay, what's the silver lining in a stinky situation? Is how do we make us more efficient and effective going forward? Because as we've learned even before COVID came in, right, our market is changing at such a rapid pace. The more responsive we can be, the clearer we can be, the more exact in our communication, you can get that right answer and that right result the first time for a lot less cost, a lot less hassle and confusion throughout the channels. So that's some of the things that we've seen as we've been dealing through, the pandemic and continue to every day. And hopefully it's going to make us all better and stronger, as we come out here.
I just chuckled with your 7 person comment. They're all in 7 different locations. They weren't sitting next to each other anymore.
Right.
So that explains it. Todd, what about you? And you have a smaller organization, but what kind of experiences have you had?
I think there's kind of 2 sides to that. There's both what did we do internally, with our teams in terms of how we dealt with it, and then externally from a market opportunity standpoint, what did we do? So, I mean, first off, just externally, we relatively early on partnered with both an e-commerce company as well as Joey Ryder, who's obviously a fairly well-known designer in the industry. And, we kind of thought, well, what is the change going to look like? What is this hybrid space going to look like? What is the new office going to look like and home offices? So we relatively early on we were over about 6 to 7 months, we developed a new product line for the e-commerce company called Cake, and Cayke, and then in collaboration with Joey Ryder. So that was an exciting project, just thinking about what is the office going to look like. And so we jumped on that pretty quickly and launched that through the e-commerce site late last year. Internally, as everybody else, we used Zoom and Teams and all the different technology. But since such a large component of our business is customization, and as a manufacturing facility, I mean, we're really set up to support manufacturing. And obviously very is not a function that you can do remotely. And so we found that trying to support manufacturing remotely was very, very difficult to do effectively. And so we slowly started bringing our support staff back, because we just found that there's nothing that could replace being in the manufacturing facility. It's those impromptu, hey, I ran into an issue out on the floor, or hey, how do I read this print, or what do I do here? And all of those things to try to tackle that remotely. Yes, you could hop on a call, or you could call somebody, but it was very cumbersome and really difficult to overcome. So we then focused a lot more heavily on how do we ensure that our work environment here is very safe, keeping people separated, monitoring their health, making certain that they feel good. So we, over the course of several months, we're bringing our team back. And I think that because we did that relatively early, now it's a little better for us, because they're not going through that learning curve now. We're not that we're back into normal rhythm, but we're having fewer hiccups. And again, for us trying to support manufacturing, we just found that whereas remote work works in some functions, when you're talking about engineering or even customer service or product development, project management, all of those functions, certainly quality, basically 90% of the functions of our front office staff supports manufacturing. And so we needed them here on site. And I was really happy. I mean, most people were actually pretty thankful to be able to come back, and they missed that interaction with their peers. And whereas there was the early on trepidation on what's this going to be like, once they kind of walk in, it's like, oh, okay, this feels comfortable. And then they could, get back to work. And it's been great just to see that, again, culture and the social interactions and the team enjoying being a team.
Interesting observations. Kyle, I'd like you to wrap this one up, and then we'll move on to some other questions.
Hey, thanks. Yeah, I wish like Todd, we were back in the office. At Leggett & Platt, we made a decision back in March of last year to have everybody work from home who wasn't required to be in the office and working with the factory. So I've been working from home since March of last year, and we've not been traveling as well. So it's really not work from anywhere. It's all work from home for us. And I think our real focus was just focusing on the safety of our manufacturing employees. Just didn't make any sense to risk losing anybody, any productivity by someone inadvertently getting sick or contact traced through somebody in the office. So I'd say it's worked out reasonably well, but like many here, it's not the ideal place to work of a regular basis. A couple of things we've learned, obviously. First, as a company, we basically have all been working in the office almost entirely across the globe until the pandemic. And we really learned over the last year that we can have some flexible working practices for people, and it allows them the ability to be home when necessary, to work from different places. And it's been a terrific learning experience for Leggett & Platt that we can have a more, like I said, more work from anywhere, and more ubiquitous work state in the future. So it's been, that's been really good. Simple things we learned. I mean, for me, a lot of our folks, a number of our people didn't have all the right tools and technology to work from their houses. Not only furniture, but they didn't have what is VPN for getting into the company network, or the right kind of equipment, printers. We had to get those basic things set up for people as well early that we just take for granted as well. Not having the right space at home. We've got people working in Italy who don't have, they've got small places that they live in that's just really not suited to being there all the time. So disruptions, and having children there has been pretty much a matter of course over the last year that you just get used to you think maybe was a problem, but it's not that much of a problem. So I'd say we've learned a lot as a company. I think productivity has been good, but like most companies that you heard, our ability to connect and collaborate with our organization as a group has definitely gone down. And so I look forward to us getting back into more of a rhythm, being back in the office more frequently back in the fall.
Sounds like a lot of new opportunities for new product development and new ideas at NeoCon in October. I'm going to move on. This is perhaps a little more sensitive topic for many people, but we can't ignore it. And that is, how are you addressing issues surrounding racial and social diversity within your organizations? And again, I'm going to start with Kyle again, and then we'll move to Rebecca. So Kyle, would you please take that?
Yeah, thanks. I think, I'd say at Leggett, we've spent quite a bit of time on this particular topic since I'd say mid last year. It's being led by our executive group of the company. We have an executive team, and now we've got a full-fledged effort with many people around the organization. I've been lucky to be part of the core effort from the time it started. And it really is about how do we basically focus and put a plan in place and efforts in place to increase diversity, equity, inclusion at our company, and put that in place for our supplier relationships and all our relationships in the community. We basically established a number of pillar teams, 5 pillar teams that we meet every week on. It's led by our CEO and all our executives on all the calls. I'd say it's a great opportunity to sort of understand what's our baseline as an organization around the world. Obviously, we're in the manufacturing business. A lot of white males involved in this particular business, but it was enlightening to see that we have quite a bit of diversity in the company. Not as much at the leadership levels that we'd like, and it's a big issue for us. It's a big issue with our board, and I think it's a terrifically significant issue, and will be with our customers going forward in the market. And I guess we look at it not only as a requirement for our business, but it's really an advantage for us. The more diversity, the more employee engagement we have, we just think we're going to be better. We'll be a better organization. We'll be more creative. And so we look at this as really a significant part of our overall company strategy and effort going forward at Leggett. I think as a number of companies do. And so something I'm happy to talk about with anybody at a future date, but it's a big issue with us.
Thank you, Kyle. Rebecca, I certainly will appreciate your comments.
Okay, so I've lived in the diversity world for 32 years. We are one of 2 women-owned companies in our industry. Our company is about 50-50 male to female. We have 40% white, 33% Hispanic, and 27% Black. So I think from that standpoint, we're is about as diverse as you can get. We provide diversity training for all of our employees about diversity and inclusion. And I'm the mother of a gay daughter and the grandmother of a Black 7-year-old beautiful little girl. So my whole world is diverse. On the supplier diversity side, I think this is something that we really need to have some really honest conversations about, because even though all of the government contractors have to submit small business plans, very few of them actually fulfill their obligation to what they were telling the government that they're going to do. The problem is the government doesn't do anything about it. And so every government contract is supposed to use 23% of the total dollars with small businesses. And they're supposed to report that back to the federal government. That's not happening, and there's no ramifications. On the corporate side, the corporations have very different rules about what they count when they're saying, oh yeah, we do 8% with diverse suppliers. Well, 2 of the largest soda manufacturers remove sugar from their numbers, because they say there are no women-owned sugar suppliers. Well, think about how much sugar they buy. It's the largest commodity that they purchase. And so even though they say, oh, we do 8% or 9% with diverse suppliers, they've taken 40% of their costs out before they get there. So I think there's still a lot of work to be done in the supplier diversity side of things. And there's also other situations where awards are given to like a small dealer, and then that dealer turns around and awards, they buy product from one of the big manufacturers. And that is not, it's actually illegal to do that if it is awarded as a small business set aside. But the SBA doesn't have time to go and fight about it, and GSA will not fight about it because they don't have the right people, or they don't have enough people to do this. So, you know, what they tell me is they count on us to be the police. So we're supposed to go report our dealers, which is really difficult and really hard, about the fact that they're cheating, and you know, all of our teaming partners that are big that are cheating. So I think that, you know, there's everybody says they have a supplier diversity program, but what are they truly doing, and how much are they truly spending with small businesses? And in the last 4 years, the number of government contractors from a small business standpoint went from 15,000 down to 9,200. So small businesses are just going away from a government contracting standpoint because there's just so much cheating going on that you just can't make money and compete when you're dealing with all of this that's going on. And to lose that many small businesses, I mean, almost a third of small businesses have either gone out of business or just decided they're not going to deal with the government anymore. It's pretty scary when you think that we actually employ 80% of all the Americans, and small businesses are just disappearing left and right.
Thank you, Rebecca. We're going to move along here. The topic now is reshoring. I'm going to start with Les. But is your businesses experiencing more interest, or where companies are shifting? What are you seeing in terms of shifting the supply base to North America, or specifically to Michigan? Are you seeing any of this as a trend as a supply chain management company?
I thought we'd see a lot more of it, you know, with the tariff impact. You know, that whole purpose was to drive this reshoring initiative. But right now, you know, people are, if they're not manufacturing in China to service China or that market in that region, and developing that supply base, we're seeing, you know, the trend of leaving China where they can't, where some multinationals can, or that supply base can, then they're moving into Thailand and Vietnam and whatever. But I think long term, and I think this pandemic is going to drive a lot of it, with just the higher logistics costs and on top of the tariff. I don't see any softening in tariffs, but I do think once we get through the pandemic, I think there's going to be a lot more activity due to the cost, and I see that shift coming, both either a nearshore operation or reshoring altogether.
Thank you. We're going to move on to our last question, and we'll do some wrap up. But Amy, I want to address this to you to begin with, and we'll see if anyone else has some comments. But talk about the relationships between OEM buyers and suppliers. And historically, they've been a bit adversarial, often distrustful. How would you describe today's OEM supplier relationship climate?
Sure. I don't like to lump everyone into one bucket or overly generalize. You know, relationships are unique, just as companies and individuals are unique. But, That said, industries can tend to value strategic partnerships or transactional relationships more than another. I would say from our perspective, the office furniture industry overall would tend to be more collaborative. It really is, it depends, right? There's been a lot of leadership changes at various organizations, and that leader is going to drive the culture for that organization. You've got, again, both customers that value those strategic partnerships. You've got some that prefer to keep suppliers at a distance and treat them as commodities. And there's good and bad, I guess, for both approaches. It really depends on what you want to get out of the relationship, short-term and long-term. But we find that most successful organizations have relationships with their suppliers the same as they do with their customers. When you think about it, you want to be close to your customer. Why? Because you can better understand and meet their needs. It reduces complexity and confusion because there's more clarity. You can respond faster, reduce costs, be competitive, and your customer is highly satisfied. Your customer hopefully gave you their time. And so if you don't value your suppliers that way, why should your customers value you that way as well? After all, you're their supplier. So we try to use that to say throughout the channel, the better the relationships you have, the stronger your business is on both sides. And that goes back, I think, to the first question, you asked, Mike, on, the supply chain issues that we've all been facing and the disruptions we've had. You need partners throughout the channel to make sure that your supply chains are robust so that our end customers, Rebecca, Todd, can deliver to their end customers day in and day out. So we like to talk about what makes a successful relationship. I think those best wins come from those partners who are truly collaborative. Think of one another as an extension of their business and look for mutual wins, wanting to work for those long-term gains, and really having access to the right decision makers at every step of the process so you can respond quickly and move fast. Keep those decision-making processes as short as possible to keep projects going and cost and complexity down. You can look through the industry. Some do it better than others, and you see them moving fast and being able to execute. And I would say if you were able to dive into the weeds, you would see that they value those relationships with their suppliers higher than others. And they do a better job of concerted communication and efforts to stay connected with their team. So I think that's a big part of their success.
I want to add a comment to that. I will dare say I spent almost 40 years of my career as a tier 1 supplier, or working for or with. And to see the relationships today versus early on, the 1970s, is far different. But I think one of the reasons why is we've had many people move from the OEM buyer side, if you will, to the supplier side. So I think a lot of people are seeing things from both sides of the coin, and I think that's very, very good. Does anyone have any other last minute comments? Because we've got about 2 minutes here. Anyone else have anything else they want to add to the discussion today? Very quiet. Well, thank you very much. This has been a wonderful experience. Thank you to all 5 of you, and thank you to the more than 100 people who have been tuning in and listening to us. And have a wonderful day and a wonderful week. And I will turn this back to Tanya.
Thank you.
Thank you all.
Thank you to our esteemed panel. I hope you all were taking notes. That was some great information and commentary. We did have a question posed about recording, and we have recorded this entire webinar, and Katie from our team will be following up with an email to all registrants with a link to the recording. So feel free to share with your staff. So this wraps up our webinar. 10:40, we will begin pre-selected one-to-one meetings. If you have meetings scheduled, please feel free to stick around. If you don't, this is the end of the program. So we ask, if you do not have any one-to-one meetings scheduled, go ahead and drop off. We will be moving suppliers into the buyer rooms at 10:40. So you've got about 20 minutes before our meetings will begin. So again, thank you so much for tuning in. We hope you enjoyed our program. Have a great day.